The mysterious Dr. Caligari, played by Werner Krauss, arrives in rural German village with his companion Cesare, a man in an eternal state of sleep who can be ordered to perform his master's commands. And a series of gruesome murders lead some to believe that the doctor and his strange assistant may well be to blame. But they consider this one of the 5 greatest horror movies that were ever made.
3, 2, 1. I knew you were going to do a 10. She loves this movie.
I love this movie.
As a newbie watching it, I didn't get the beginning of the movie when as I found out, the unreliable narrator.
Francis is telling his friend about his fiancée, Jane.
Right. So it's the beginning, and I'm wondering, I didn't get it again.
Because she was like a ghost.
Yeah, she's like sort of like zombie-like,
right,
ghost-like, sort of walking through, and he's talking to this other person, this older person, and I'm wondering, what the hell's going on? It took me a while to figure out what the heck was going on. What I found interesting, too, being someone from government, who actually worked in government for over 30 plus years, Caligari wants to display his symbolist presentation, or whatever you want to call it, to the public. He wants to have it as part of the fair that's going on. And the narrator goes, again, it sort of like slides into the story of Caligari. Caligari is trying to go to, presumably, a city hall. And he's walking through all of these angled sets. And again, not knowing, I'm like, why are these images very slanted, hard edges, sort of like my glasses, like they're very angular.
Yes.
They're tall. And when he goes to talk to the clerk, he's asking for a permit. He's asking someone, where can I find the clerk? And the person says, it's too busy. You're not going to go talk to him. And all of a sudden he pulls out money, which I thought I got a little chuckle of that. He's bribing to get access to the town official. So as the person accepts, he goes into town hall, and the clerk, who's sitting on this very high table, and in the background you see a couple of other bureaucratic type folks sitting at a high, but not as high as him, table, and Caligari is told to go sit to the side. And you're like, wait, what the hell is going on? Why are they sitting like that? Why are they... Until you really get into the movie, you're kind of questioning what's happening. I found it amusing. I thought it was funny, but I also thought it was kind of like, makes you kind of think, where are we going with this?
Well, Germans were so strict too, and I can say it because they're my people. They always put that person in a high position of authority.
Oh,
and
sure.
It was exaggerated on purpose to make everybody else feel small, and yet,
Right, town clerk nowadays in your local town hall might not be how we think it is, but especially in European countries, from my experience, it's almost like the mayor without it being the mayor, because you need that person to get access to whatever you need. In this case, Caligari needed a permit to display his show.
Correct.
The Somnambulist show.
Yeah, that got a little confusing too, that part of the story, because you didn't realize, was Caligari in there, or was that another person? And then I think the way they explained it a bit was when the jig is up and they find it, he runs down the street and all over is Caligari, Caligari, Caligari. They put that on the screen.
His friend Alan, who was shocked when the Somnambulist said, you're going to die tonight, he ends up dying. Is it because Cesare predicted it, or is it because he purposely went out to kill him? Because Caligari, through his will of someone else, you go kill, if that was the reason. Just like a tyrannical dictator would say to its people, go to war, go kill.
The whole thing changes when they get to the sanitarium, of course. The doctor in the sanitarium finds a book that talks about somnambulism, and Caligari finds it, and he wants to impersonate this person and study it so that he can control people. And of course, he's nuts. Caligari's really cool, really interesting, and it moves, and the story goes.
It does move along. I didn't find myself bored or falling asleep like I did with Intolerance, but I had a little bit of a tough time following it. But as the story unfolded, you're caught on. Yeah,
it was confusing when the sanitarium and the other doctor and who was he. That was a little confusing.
But I love the twist. So we go through this whole thing. Alan is murdered. Caligari is in the home with Cesare. Francis thinks that, wait a minute, Cesare is going to kill again. Let's go there and watch him. He's watching his home, Caligari's home, through this window, but it's all this set design that's kind of weird, angular.
Jiggly-jaggledy.
Almost like cartoonish, but not cartoonish in the sense of silliness, almost like kind of fantasy, and It must have been so different to see.
And I love
in
when
that
he
time
runs
period.
down the path.
Right, he's running this angular path and he's going up.
It's such a character. The set design is such a character.
So as they're watching Caligari and Cesare in this thing that looks like a coffin, Jane, girlfriend.
You didn't know if she was a ghost or she's crazy or she has somnambulalism.
Did you know that the writers had a similar experience? So Janowitz and Meyer had a friend, Gilda Langer, who they both had a thing for. And if you remember, Alan and Francis both had a thing for Jane.
Right.
Alan, of course, dies, but you learn early on in the movie that they both have feelings for her. But Alan's dead, so now Francis got her to himself. Cesare all of a sudden appears at the window of Jane's bedroom, and it almost reminded me of Dracula, like how Dracula imitated
also Frankenstein.
Also Frankenstein.
With Elizabeth.
Right, with Elizabeth. Also Frankenstein with the mad scientist.
Correct.
Caligari, the mad scientist, and Frankenstein, a mad scientist also. And then that's where you see Cesare enter the bedroom, going slower and slower, and you could feel the horror, the terror.
It's great.
And then it's just all of a sudden.
There's a film term called mise en scène. Are you familiar with mise en scène?
I read that.
Okay, now it's really hard because it looks like mise en scene, but it's pronounced mise en scène, and it's puts right in your face. It lets you identify the good guys, and they're disconnected from Caligari and Cesare. And the term means all elements appear in front of the audience in a single shot. The actors, the setting, the props, the costumes, and the lighting, and that's mise en scène, which they still use in film today, and they talk about it a lot, so it's a good term to know.
I want to talk about the cliffhanger ending, kind of twisty. I was shocked because I wasn't expecting it. And I think that's the great part about this movie. You go through, and spoiler alert, folks, if you haven't seen it, just pause us for a couple of minutes. Francis comes in and he's following Caligari. He follows him into this psychiatric hospital. He gets the other doctors. He goes, wait a minute, where's this guy Caligari? He's trying to describe it. Again, this is a silent movie, so there's no talking. There's no narration except for title cards. So everything is expressed. They discover that Caligari is the guy that's ahead of this nut house.
Hospital, yeah.
And they get Caligari, they put him in a straitjacket, they put him away, and all seems to end there, you would think, from the viewer. I thought, okay, we wrap this up.
Right.
And all of a sudden, whoa, there's a twist. We find out that this unreliable narrator, Francis, is a patient at this psychiatric hospital. That really Caligari, his image changes, he's normal, he is the head of the psychiatric hospital, but now Francis is in the straitjacket. Right. And all of the psychiatric patients are there. And then Jane is sitting there, and Jane says, we can't love. We're not told to love. Right. Because Caligari, again, representing the leader, the dictator, the head of, is telling all these people that are kind of zombie-like how they should think, how they should feel, how they should move. Again, a representation of what's going on in Germany. So I went, whoa, that really was an incredible ending.
And they consider it the first twist in film. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason why it tops like one of the top 5 horror films, because it was groundbreaking, and you could not watch it with title cards and you would still know everything that was going on.
Yeah, and that's visually. The amazing part about it. There's no dialogue except for expression.
No. Right.
There's no dialogue.
Exactly.
And you know the story. So I am dressed up as, can you guess?
Well, I'm guessing because they haven't seen the film yet, but you're Cesare.
Cesare.
The somnambulist.
Somnambulist. So for those people that don't know what that word is, because I didn't.
It's a big word.
The sleepwalker. So I am the sleepwalker.
You're the sleepwalker.
AKA sleepwalker, murderer, and you are?
Dr. Caligari, even though he didn't have pink hair, but he had crazy hair, so,
Yes, he had crazy
pink hair today.
And
I am, well, I'm Swiss German, so I fit the bill.
We're in 1920 Germany, Weimar Republic. We just got out of World War I, the Great War at the time, and hard reparations on the German people. And it was a time when things got a little bit loose. Things were a little bit risque. You had a lot of, kind of dancing, drinking, and in the true spirit of Germany. And there were 3 beers at the time that are still produced today: Paulaner, Spaten, and Hofbrau. So we chose Paulaner and Hofbrau to enjoy.
A restaurant I remembered, the Hofbrau House. So it was named after the beer?
It was, exactly.
Okay.
Actually, this was
I will hold my glass up.
1589. And here I'm going to pour mine. And then for you, I'm going to pour the Paulaner, because part of the classic cinema sips is to get yourself in the mood for the movie. You know, it's just not about sitting and eating popcorn.
Right.
Let's experience the movie as best we can. So have a drink, a cocktail, something that represents that period of time. So I'm going to pour you the Paulaner, a nice German beer. So cheers.
Cheers. Clink.
Let's sit back, relax.
I'm going to have foam on my face and a mustache.
You can have a mustache? We already have a mustache. That's a joke, folks.
I do not. I just got that. I do not have a mustache.
Okay.
I don't wax. I'm a blonde. German Expressionism. It used distortion, visual distortion, and hyper-expressive performances to show the inner turmoil of the German people after World War I, because that was a bad scene. I mean, you know, Germany rose up again in World War II, but they were pretty decimated after it. It reflects the German film audience's feelings, because they really were carried along for the ride in this war, and it was awful. So it was reflected in German cinema, which was stark, angular, strange. They had a dystopia to it. And it's in a lot of films, especially in the silent era, but it has a distinct and stark look that's very unsettling and very frightening to the audience at that time, except it was an escapism for them as well.
You mentioned a lot of the sentiments of the German people, and you talk about the rise of political extremism, and you're getting into Nazism. So set the stage for a time where you had a lot of, you know, the cabaret. You had, within the major cities, you had the cabaret, you had, you know, music, you had art, you have all this cultural explosion and sort of free love, kind of. But in the countrysides, which was most of Germany, you had very traditional people, very straight-laced, which, again, when you're talking about survival, you want something that is going to help you put bread on the table, feed your children. So, and all this blame, and you're talking about a country that was decimated. The Treaty of Versailles just basically put the reparations on Germany where they could not survive economically. And the German film industry passed, the Weimar Republic passed laws that would prevent outside films from coming into Germany. So you had that invisible wall of influence, because they didn't want the influence from Europe or from America. They wanted their own, which if there was any economy that did well during that era, was the film industry, because their only competition was themselves. So they took that, as you said, expressed the angst.
The people that you talked about that were out in the countryside, and it wasn't like they were connected like people now. You look out and you see a house, you see a this, you see a that. It was very rural, of course. And when they were very poor, eventually that's how Hitler rose into power, because he was going to serve, you know, like secretly had his agenda, but he was going to get them out of poverty. So everybody liked him in the beginning, and then they didn't realize, okay, the Third Reich and also the SS.
Right,
but
and you're also looking to blame another group in society.
Right.
So you're talking about like the folks in the countryside, like you mentioned, and all these crazy things were happening in the inner cities, and not so much crazy in the sense that out of this world, but you're talking about art and culture exploding. So you're going to have something different from the norm,
right.
And people are looking to blame someone else for those inequities, the economy. So it was an interesting period of time. German Expressionism took all of that and portrayed it on the silver screen. So Caligari is the authority, and Cesare is the people. They're the people blindly following their leader. In this case, Caligari, the mad scientist.
Yeah.
And the co-writers, Janowitz and Meyer, are portraying that. They were pacifists. They were against the war, and they were against authority. And that's portrayed also in in the movie. They had a dispute with the director, Robert Wiene.
Yeah, Wiene.
Wiene? Is that how I'm pronouncing it? Because the movie, or the portrayal of what the movie should have become, was an anti-government sentiment that people are blindly following their leaders. But because the director felt it wouldn't work when the movie was released, he changed the beginning and the ending of the story. But they were so outraged by the director's flipping the story around from an anti-government story to, well, government is okay because it's all right.
Yeah.
People need someone, a leader, to guide them because, and again, the German people were looking for at that time someone to take them out of this bad economic situation, this craziness that's going on, into something more stable.
The writer, Hans Janowitz, he got the idea after visiting a carnival. He was at a carnival and he saw a man lurking about in the shadows. And then the next day, he found, the next morning, it spread across the whole place that a girl was brutally murdered. And that gave him the idea for this film.
Supposedly, went to the funeral. There was a storyline where he went to the funeral and he saw the person that went into the bushes. And supposedly that was the woman that got murdered. It was like, oh, is this person the one who killed them? Did I actually see
the murderer?
The murderer?
Yeah. So
it really, to add to that, what I found really fascinating, he experienced a fortune teller and he asked if he would survive the World War I, the Great War. And he said yes. So it was almost like that scene where Caligari says to the audience, to Alan in particular, Alan raises his hand, yeah, I want to ask, when am I gonna die? And the somnambulist answers, you're gonna die tonight.
Yeah.
The midnight. And so he's taking real life experiences and creating the story.
Werner Krauss plays Caligari, crazy looking person, and he had careers in theater. All these people in silent film came from theater, but he transcended well, and he was in film, and he went right into the 1940s in film.
So Conrad Veidt, who played the role of Cesare in the movie, he's most noted as having that memorable character of setting that kind of scary, moody, terroristic kind of acting that people weren't accustomed to prior to that. One of the movies that I found that was fascinating by Conrad Veidt, he did the movie of Different from the Others, which was one of the first gay movies that was actually portrayed in film back in 1919.
Really?
He played a violin teacher, and it was one of the earliest portrayal of gays in a sympathetic way. In the end, it was kind of a sad ending, but it was the first opportunity for gays to be put in a kind of a positive, sympathetic was the word that was used often with this film.
Which is amazing in Germany.
Which was unheard of.
In Germany?
But Germany, during that time, during the Weimar Republic, you saw things like sex changes being discussed and being offered. You're talking about a gay community that existed. You're talking about the cabaret where men dressed up as women, women dressed up as men.
Yeah, when you think of the Liza Minnelli, Joel Grey cabaret, it was very androgynous.
There. He left Germany because when the Nazis took over, even before Hitler took over, the Nazi Party, they was told by Joseph Goebbels, who told all of the actors and actresses, you're only doing certain roles. You're only doing certain. They were controlling the film industry because it was a propaganda machine for them. And Conrad Veidt at that time married a Jewish woman.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Get out of Germany.
And he was told by Goebbels, listen, if you deny your German heritage and your German nationality, you'll never get work in Germany. So he actually fled. He fled away from Germany. He went to Hollywood, but the problem is he didn't know English well. And again, you're talking about World War I. You're talking about a German accent didn't work well in Hollywood. Talkies were, coming out at that time.
And you weren't that popular in America,
Right. So he immigrated to England then, and then came back to do the iconic classic film, Casablanca. Played the role of the sinister Major Heinrich Strasser.
And he played from then on in the 40s. Every time they needed a Nazi or a German, they put Conrad Veidt in the role. He was like typecast because, we talked about other silent films where you had exotics coming in, meaning like Rudolph Valentino, Latin Lovers. And you had people coming from Germany, so they played the part, especially around the two world wars.
So the movie itself had a global impact. As I mentioned earlier, Germany didn't want any films coming in, and likewise, films were not allowed in France, in England, in the States. But because this did so well in Germany, they were able to break through to America to show it in the States, to France, to England. They actually changed the rules, or sort of skirted the rules in order to have this. So it broke so much ground. I mean, nowadays you're talking about directors like Lynch. You're talking about Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Using the same styles in their movies. So it had such a long-lasting impact.
Yeah.
Name 2 connections between the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and the Batman comic book created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Come on, I know you hate superhero movies.
No, I don't. I don't hate Batman. I think it's kind of cool. I like it, but I cannot. All I can think of is Gotham. I don't know. I think dark Gotham.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, close.
Do I get half a point?
You get a third of a point.
Oh, Jesus.
Maybe just a quarter. But
God, he's mean.
So in the creation of the Batman comic now, so let's talk about the comic. Bob Kane and Bill Finger used a lot of horror movies in that time frame to create comic book villains and comic book heroes.
Okay.
So with Caligari, who do you think Caligari is?
The Penguin?
Yes!
Ah!
Yes! So, yes, so the inspiration for the Penguin was Dr. Caligari.
Good.
So this one is a
Not
stretch.
that
This is
dumb.
one of 7 degrees of response.
Separation.
Yes.
The Kevin Bacon thing.
So Cesare, who was played by?
Conrad Veidt.
He played in a very classic movie called The Man Who Laughs. Gwynplaine, if I'm pronouncing it right, a disfigured man whose face was carved into a horrible leering grin, who was the inspiration for another Batman villain.
The Joker.
The Joker!
The Lodger from 1927, psychological thriller. A landlady suspects that her new lodger is a madman killing women in London. Very famous picture, very creepy picture. Laird Krieger looked like, a big, heavy guy, creepy, and very, very good. It's not on that much, but you can find it. Nosferatu. 1922, vampire Count Orlok expresses interest in a new residence and a real estate agent, Hutter's wife. It starred Max Schreck, who actually thought he was a vampire, so they say. And it was a precursor to Bela Lugosi's Dracula, remade in 1979 with Klaus Kinski. And you're going to die when you hear this. A 2024 version coming out this Christmas with Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Really?
So what is going on with James Bond?
Yeah.
And
Come on, Aaron.
I just watched
Get rid of the wife.
I just watched the Klaus Kinski one last week, having nothing to do with this. This is one of my favorites. I love this as much as Nosferatu. It's on every Halloween on Turner Classic Movies. Haxan, Witchcraft in America, 1922. Fictionalized documentary showing the evolution of witchcraft from its pagan roots to its confusion with hysteria in Eastern Europe. That's where they first got the image of the witches riding on the brooms. Tons of sexuality, nudity, and the devil, bong, 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 with the witches. Bong, 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 right on the screen. Bong, 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 with the witches.
What movies was this?
This is Haxan, Witchcraft in America. I will tell you when it's on. I watch it every year. And I will tape it if you don't see it so you can see it. The Phantom of the Opera, 1925. A mad, disfigured composer who lives in the underpinnings of the Paris Opera House seeks love with a lovely young opera singer. It stars Lon Chaney, who was the king of silent films, famous for this and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, another great silent film he did. One of the, we think about the Charles Laughton one, but there was an original silent one. Definitely should watch it. It's one of the most famous scenes in film history when he rips off his mask and reveals his deformity. Very famous, became a universal monster. Spawned Broadway show, which ran for 13,981 performances, and was in the stable of the Universal Studios Monsters of Filmland. I could give you 10 more, but that's it.
So, Deb, I found the saying,
Yes.
The line that Jane says in the movie, and I
Oh.
want to read it to get
Sure.
us to where we need to go.
Okay.
Jane in the nut house.
The lunatic asylum.
The lunatic asylum. We are not free to answer the call of our hearts. Essentially, Jane and those that are there ought to do the bidding of the oppressors, and usually they're criminal, as we talked about Hitler. But I can honestly say, in this show, we say whatever is on our mind. We are not the lemmings that maybe some others might be. And by doing so, I think we express ourselves just like in German Expressionism did, in a way that's unique, avant-garde, and artistic. So, Debbie, as I always say, where are we going next?
Well, we never know where we're going until we go there.